We were trying something new this year with the tomato plants, which seemed like a good idea, but I wasn't sure how well it would work or how far we could push it. We wanted to keep harvesting some of the later spring crops growing in the polytunnel, but we also wanted to keep the tomato plants healthy and continuing to grow. So we potted them up into grow bags and placed them beside the other tomato plants that had already been transplanted into cleared sections of the polytunnel bed. These plants sat there for weeks, growing beside their neighbors, and things got a little bit crowded, and we eventually tied them up temporarily to prevent them from falling over. When it was finally time to move the plants in the grow bags, they were quite tall, and there was lots of roots growing out through the holes at the bottom of the bag. I could have spent more time trying to gently tease the roots out of the soil, but the more I did that, the more I would be damaging the roots of the neighboring plants, and I wanted this to be an easy process. So I just pulled them out of the ground with whatever roots came along easily, unclipped the plant from the temporary twine, and placed them in a shallow hole in the soil at the new permanent location. Moving such a tall plant was easier than I thought it would be, especially when I had a new length of twine ready in place to clip the top of the plant to. I watered the base with a liquid feed and moved the soil in to cover the roots and stabilize the base of the bag. Then I pruned off quite a few of the lower leaves, which is something we tend to do with tomato plants anyway, as I figured this would lighten the load on the damaged roots, and it might have been better to remove even more leaves. The next day was quite sunny and warm, and these plants were wilting at the top, so they were obviously not getting enough water through the roots. But I watered them again and tried to keep them well watered for the next few days. 10 days later, these plants seem fine and are growing again. The plants that were moved do seem smaller than those that were transplanted into the ground about 6 weeks earlier, but not by as much of a difference as I had expected. And it will be interesting to see how well they grow through the rest of the season. Preventing the roots from growing out of the bottom of the grow bag would have helped reduce the stress of the move, and I think that a bigger grow bag would have been more useful the longer the plants had to stay in their temporary location. But it seems that tomatoes are quite resilient plants, and I won't be afraid to move them around like this in the future, even if there is some root damage, especially if it means we get to harvest a lot more out of the polytunnel. And then just wound up enough so it doesn't... Okay. So apart from the root getting fucked, but then I